Hello, my name is Art Connolly, and I would like to speak to you in regard to something that some people are calling the Gagetown atrocity. In May of 2005, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation reported a story that the deadly chemical Agent Orange was sprayed at Canadian Forces Base Gagetown in 1966 and 1967. As I was sitting listening to the newscast, my sister called to tell me that our father was very ill and that chances are he was not going to live. I flew to Halifax, and as I sat up in the wee hours of the morning and he slept, I sat beside his bed and I watched the 24-hour news channel in regards to the Agent Orange story, hoping for updates to see if there had been any more reported. During my time watching the newscast and reflecting upon my childhood, was a military soldier. We had spent approximately 13 years at Canadian Forces Base Gagetown between 1956 and 1969. Again, as I watched the all-night newscast, I started to reflect upon my childhood and I started to connect the dots. In 1973, my 7-year-old brother Chris died of Reye's syndrome. Reye's syndrome is associated with chemical poisoning. 1984, my 28-year-old pregnant sister, Patty, died of pulmonary embolism. We lost the baby as well. Pulmonary embolisms are associated with chemical poisoning. Another sister suffered a miscarriage. Miscarriages are associated with chemical poisoning. In 1991, my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Her stomach was surgically removed by a gastrectomy. Cancers are associated with chemical poisoning. Finally, on May 24th of 2005, my father did die. My father had a host of diseases. There was congestive heart failure, he had a low hemoglobin count, there was a point in his life, the last few years of his life, he had to use oxygen. Again, these are things that are associated with chemical poisoning. After the story had been reported, the Department of National Defense did step forward and said yes, Agent Orange had been sprayed for a total of 7 days during 1966 and 1967 by the U.S. military. Later, information was obtained under the Access to Information Act, which showed that the Canadian military, or Department of National Defense, also had sprayed defoliants at Canadian Forces Base Gagetown. Between 1956 and 1984, the Department of National Defense had sprayed 1.3 million liters and an additional 1 million pounds of dry defoliant chemical at CFB Gagetown. This information came from the Access to Information. It's listed right here. You can see this at www.agentorangealert, and I will post it at the end of this video, the address for you. So what we have here is basically the Canadian Department of National Defense was very quick to report that yes, Agent Orange had been sprayed by the U.S. military, but somewhat negligent in reporting the fact that they themselves had sprayed so much defoliant at CFB Gagetown. Many people have stepped forward and said that their families, their lives have been affected, their health has been ruined, and they're not getting the answers that they deserve. The present day government has awarded an ex gratia payment, which means basically no guilt, to individuals who suffered certain diseases, certain illnesses that were listed on the Institute of Medicine's famed Agent Orange list. These people that obtained those diseases are eligible for a $20,000 compensation. The government has ignored the other 26 years, thereby leaving probably tens of thousands of people who have been affected out in the cold, so to speak. People have tried to ask the government for a public inquiry. The government has ignored that request. They have basically denied access to information or have not answered the questions that so many have. There were over 315,000 troops that went through CFB Gagetown in that time span of 56 to 84. Now those are government figures, they're not figures that I come up with or picked out of thin air. The number 315,000, that does not include the wives, it does not include the children of the soldiers, it does not include the civilians that lived in the surrounding area. Some have said that number would probably be close to 1 million. With so many questions being unanswered and a government stating that they would like to clear this up and make sure that this case is closed, I think it is imperative that we do have an inquiry. There are things that need to be answered, and what I am asking you to do is to write to your Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, and ask him for a public inquiry into defoliant spraying at Canadian Force Base Gagetown in New Brunswick. Now, it costs nothing to write to the Prime Minister. I will put up his address at the end of this video. Please help me in obtaining an inquiry for the victim of the Gagetown defoliant spraying. Thank you very much.